My best friend's been driving for over 10 years. And he said, look, if you're gonna work part-time, you might as well make as much money as you can. And for a part-time job, it pays pretty good for this area. I enjoy the elementary kids more than I do anything. But it's been a lot of fun.
People tell me that, how can you drive kids? And I'm like, hey, that's the best part of the job. The rest of it's a piece of cake. So, but I really enjoy, driving, and keeps me active, gets me up in the morning.
I drive the school bus because I love it. It's an awesome job. I love going and picking up the students, watching them get on the bus, the little ones with the big smiles on their face, wondering, all the excitement they're going to be doing while they're going to school, middle, high school. I drive all ages. It's just a wonderful job.
I drive because I'm retired Navy, and it's great, after serving my country, to give back to my community. Our kids are the future of America, and it's great to have a part to where I'm contributing to them and to make sure that they get what they need.
We will train you from the get-go. We should be able to help you through the whole process of getting your learner's permit, getting your endorsements, and then we have a 24-hour classroom training that we do. And then we do your 24-hour on the road training. So we do all of it in-house. All you need to do is come with a love for children.
I drive the school bus because I wanted to have some adult interaction as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to get out, and driving with Roanoke County, I have great students. I've enjoyed this for nearly 20 years now, and I also like being a part of the community, and they trust me with their kids, and I enjoy being with my students.
I enjoy driving. The best part about driving the school bus is the children that I pick up every day.
Why?
Because they keep me younger. I'm 78 years old. They keep me younger.
I retired from public service, and I stayed at home and did all my honeydews, and basically I get bored. And I wanted something to do. My wife was a teacher, so this allowed me to have money and time off during the summer.
We do this to have something to do. A lot of our drivers are retirees, and they come out to do their community service and have a routine and have a reason to get up in the morning, and they get a little extra fun money to go on vacation and that kind of stuff. So it's a great job.
I drive because I love my children on the bus. I started off driving to be at home with my children on snow days and holidays. And in that 24-year time that I've been with the county, I have enjoyed every child on my bus and the families and the connections I've met.
Why do I drive? I drive because of the students. It's those students that make my day. You make relationship with these students, and even after they graduate from high school, they'll come up and give you a hug and let you know that they appreciate you and what you did.
I love driving a school bus because I had a school bus driver that I admired, and I always watched her, and she was a great person, and that challenged me to be a good bus driver. And I was a trainer for 2 years for Roanoke County, and I loved it. I enjoyed showing people what I do.
This is a family. We consider ourselves part of the transportation family. And once you become part of the family, you stay part of the family. We learn about each other's family, we support each other, we're there for each other, and we have fun while we're doing it. We get to help the students, we get to be there for them and support them.
Well, it's 3:29. We'll wait another minute, Chuck. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 Roanoke County School Board work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Here.
Here. First item on the agenda is Dr. Sean Hughes, student mental health during a pandemic. Thank you.
Speak on mental health and some of the things that our students have been facing this year. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges to our students. Our children and adolescents have experienced unprecedented interruptions in their daily lives. It is expected that these disruptions may be the precipitants of mental illness. Our kids are dealing with anxiety, depression, or other stress-related types of symptoms. The impact on children is determined by many vulnerability factors. Some of those factors are developmental age, educational status, pre-existing mental health conditions, being economically underprivileged, or being quarantined due to infection or fear of infection. Children already coping with mental health conditions have been especially vulnerable to these changes. We're continuing to learn about the significant impact of these changes as a result of the things that our students have faced. For example, in the very beginning, schools being closed, physical distancing guidelines, and then intermittently isolation as a result of either being sick or being quarantined. Previous research tells us that 1 in every 5 children has a diagnosed or diagnosable mental health condition. According to the CDC, the proportion of ER visits related to mental health concerns doubled between April and October for children ages 5 to 11, and they tripled for children ages 12 to 17. And this was compared with the same time frame in 2019. Our students have struggled with all kinds of things this year. They've had changes in their routines. They've had to learn how to physically distance from family, friends, and community. They've had a break in continuity of learning. They've had to learn new platforms, learn virtual environments, navigate technology access, and even connectivity issues at times. Our kids have faced some healthcare issues of trying to maintain their level of care if they needed mental health, switching to telehealth if they have a counselor in place, and even with physical health issues. There could be gaps in those pieces as well. Our kids have missed some significant life events. They've missed celebrations, they may have missed vacations, and even milestone events. They do experience grief and loss. So what was normally a typical school day has changed for our students. They've had to adjust to not having prom or not having sports, activities, and even adjustment to graduation this past year. Some of our kids have had a lost sense of security and safety. What are we currently seeing in our schools? Our counselors are seeing increased anxiety and depression, along with some stressors related to loneliness and some lack of social and peer interaction. Limits on socialization reduce outlets that most students need just to connect with one another, or even decompress from the day-to-day stressors that our students face. Some of our kids have struggled with just the motivation to continue with academics. When they're in a non-structured environment, it takes a lot to keep up with the daily things that need to take place for our students. In our community, we've seen a lot of things. We've seen an increase in anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, loneliness, and isolation due to the quarantine, and an increase in behaviors. Some of our families and adults have struggled with alcohol and drug abuse, and even suicidal ideation. We're seeing an increase in some domestic violence, and certainly with relationship issues, because people are spending a lot more time with one another. We're also seeing an increase in child abuse, possibly due to the lockdown. It can even be caused by economic hardship and stress that families have had to endure due to employment issues, or even basic issues like food, housing, how to pay for utilities, or access to basic healthcare needs. As this pandemic continues, it's important for all of us to support our children and adolescents. What we know is that children need structure, they need routines, they need social opportunities, they need healthy relationships, and they need activities. All of these are important coping mechanisms, and they're protective factors for our children. Children need regular, predictable routines for their mental health. Children also need certainty, and they depend on adults to feel safe and secure. You might ask, what are the things that are helpful in promoting health and well-being? Certainly addressing food insecurity, options for child care, and access to mental and physical health care. Enabling opportunities to reduce stress, such as access to nature, mindfulness activities, and physical activities. Sports and other extracurricular activities can help to develop skills needed in our students, like time management, team building, social skills, and even problem solving. However, what you have to remember is that even if students are involved in activities and athletics, living in a pandemic alone and dealing with the unknown effects of COVID can still cause significant stress for our kids. We have to continue to provide ongoing learning opportunities. We have to continue social emotional learning to help our kids to address emotional regulation, to learn how to respond to challenges, and how to have healthy relationships. We need to help our students focus on the things that they can control, because what we know with COVID is it's very hard to control those aspects. We have to help our students understand that we are in a pandemic and that restrictions to the pandemic are temporary. Even though we're 11 months in, it doesn't feel that way for a student. We have to continue providing trauma-informed education. We are partners with our parents and our families. This is an all-in process if we're going to improve mental health. It takes everyone. It takes our parents, our families, our students, the physicians, counselors, teachers, administration, and our community. We need to partner to continue to build resilience for our kids. As a community of adults, we're instrumental in doing this. We're able to help our youth with their outlets to wellness. It's really important to monitor our own stress because our reactions to stress during this pandemic can be easily reflected to our students and our children. So our coping skills and how we manage this become really very important. We have to model and promote positive stress management and help our students to pivot to alternate opportunities when needed for both their physical and mental health. It is important to understand that physical health and mental health, they go together. Those two together is what equals mental wellness. We're doing many things in our school, and of course, again, it's an all-in approach. It's something that's going to take a very long time in order to deal with the impact that COVID has had. We're providing as much of a stable and predictable school as we can. We're involved in PBIS, and that's what that's about, providing a predictable, safe, and stable environment. Our teachers are providing instruction on procedures and expectations. Our counselors are providing opportunities to learn social emotional skills. And then we have additional tiered supports that are available that include counseling and community referrals when needed. So all of the things that we have in place are critically important. We've spent a lot of time this year focusing on trauma and how to wrap around providing that education to our counselors, our administration, our teachers and staff, and now our students. And so our students, even the littles in elementary school, have received instruction on how to manage stress and some coping skills in order to deal with stress. From a mental health perspective, opportunities have been created to provide supports during this pandemic. Our elementary students, pre-K through 4, have been provided the opportunity for in-person instruction and a daily teacher check-in. Our secondary students also have this opportunity for teacher and staff check-ins. So with the decision of choosing the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday option for our hybrid students, this allows for our teachers to touch base throughout the week with our secondary students. Even our synchronous opportunities that have been provided allow the teachers to touch base with our students. Teachers, counselors, and staff are instrumental to our students. They can provide compassionate advice, build self-esteem, and assist students with navigating the pressures, as well as helping them to cope with the trauma of this pandemic. All of these efforts are important and can assist in identifying students who may need additional mental health supports. From my perspective, the mental health impact will continue to be an issue for years to come. Identifying signs of increased anxiety, worry, depression, especially working with those that have pre-existing mental health conditions, will be important. Working with our students and families will be needed to assist them along with strengthening their existing protective factors. By providing early intervention and access to the care needed, hopefully this will lead to better coping and a healthier outcome over time.
Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few things stand out as you were talking, Dr. Hughes. The experience of grief and loss, which, I mean, that's pretty, that's pretty heavy when you think about it, how that it would get to a level of grief, and I think a profound statement you said was physical and mental health go together. And I think that's an important thing that we certainly keep in mind as we go forward too, about the physical part of it. So, but thank you. That's it's really opened your eyes. So, but thank you.
So, Dr. Hughes, and this may go well with Susan, as we're discussing, as we're going through our budget. How many open counselor positions do we have? More specifically, I know that there's been, a school or two who have requested additional counselors. Obviously, last year was kind of tough from a budget standpoint, but do you have that information?
Sure. So as part of the budget season, we asked for a part-time school counselor for Green Valley Elementary based on the numbers. And in addition to that, we asked for 3 full-time life counselors that are mental health clinicians to help support our Title I schools.
Gotcha.
In elementary.
Do we currently have any open positions in counseling?
No, currently we're full.
Might be a nice spot for the Board of Supervisors to finally give us the other half of their money they never gave us. Another day, I guess. Mr. Chairman, if I could, thank you, Dr. Hughes, for sharing. And so we know from what you've said and what others have said that, mental health is a huge issue. And I think one of the best statements you made was, I don't think it's just going to be a this year thing because of this pandemic. I think it's for years to come we're going to deal with this. And so one question I have is not specifically you, but maybe somebody in your counseling group that up here in the city or wherever, but maybe you. Does Dr. Morrow, does CDC, does any of those folks come to you and ask you, hey, how should we factor in this mental health issue? And we know it's got to be prevalent. We're hearing about it. Even they're reporting about it in the news. So, do they?
Right. So I haven't had any specific conversations with the health department, and as far as just reading information directly from the CDC. But in some of our agency meetings, we do meet with other community personnel to just talk about what they're seeing at the community level and within the schools, but not specifically.
But doesn't that seem odd that we haven't had any substantive discussions with those folks that are telling us to keep things shut down? I mean, I get, the pandemic, I get the physical health part of this, but there is the mental aspect that it's kind of curious.
I can just chime in and say that, those kinds of issues are definitely a regular part of our conversations at the superintendent level with the health department, knowing that absolutely, we've been champions for, wanting, mental health counselors, life counselors. We started that program. So, we're absolutely aware of, the whole child needs. So those are definitely part of the conversations that we have at our level not aware of, health department, school counseling department interactions, but those are our conversations that we have.
I think it's hugely important. We've had those discussions amongst us that, we get the physical part of this, but I just wonder if we factor in enough the mental part of this. So thank you for what you do and everyone else.
Mr. Linden?
Yeah, again, thank you, Dr. Hughes, for that report. Do we have any additional training for teachers to help spot the emotional issues that may be in place, or any indicators that you could suggest to the and maybe you've already gone over this with teachers and substitutes, just something that they should be on the lookout for to help identify those that may need some help?
Sure. So we've done a number of things. At the very beginning of the year, we did just a brief talent ed module on mental health and things to look for as far as anxiety and depression, as well as resources not only for students or working as a teacher, but resources for them as a staff member if needed. We also provided the signs of suicide training for our teachers as well, so that, if a student decides to go to a teacher and share those concerns, that they know what to do as far as access. This year, because it is a mental health crisis, we developed a crisis tip sheet, because I don't want any teacher out there to feel like they, don't know what to do or what the appropriate steps are or how they can reach out for help. So we developed that and sent that out so that if, teachers are having conversations with students and they indicate anything of concern, they have a step-by-step of what they can do.
And of those numbers that you gave us early in the 2 times as many, 3 times as many, do you see that more from online 100% virtual learners, or is it a combination, the increase in number of?
I think that's across the board, whether it's virtually or face-to-face. I think especially initially, with the initial shutdown, it was more of a concern. I think anxiety and depression, it's ebbed and flowed this year with the different changes that students have had to face. So in the beginning, with the drastic changes, I think that was very difficult and challenging. And as time has gone on, students have learned to adapt, be resilient, make some adjustments. But it's definitely an ongoing concern.
Anything else? Thank you, Dr. Hughes.
Sure.
Very, very informative. Appreciate it. All right. The next item on the agenda is Operations Project Update. Mr. Chris Lowe. Thank you again, Dr. Hughes.
Good evening. I believe I've handed out, everyone has one of these nice colored spreadsheets. And what I'm going to do is give you a few minutes of an update on what projects are going on in operations, both capital maintenance projects and minor and major capital. So we'll start off with the first page. It's the capital maintenance projects. And what's not highlighted is what is active projects right now. The green highlights are projects that have been completed within the last 6 to 7 months. So just for reference, Penn Forest Elementary is getting a new HVAC system in their gymnasium. It's replacing a unit that has went bad. That completion is expected next weekend. Northside Middle School HVAC, this is a comprehensive replacement of rooftop units. And engineered drawings are just about complete through Lawrence Perry Associates. And once those get completed to us, we'll send them to the county for review and put the project out for bid. Clearbrook, we just received the engineered drawings back. They're being reviewed by the county now, and bidding will begin this week for that. That's also a comprehensive building-wide replacement of units. Fort Lewis Elementary, we've had one water source heat pump went down, and the other 2 that was remaining were in very poor condition, and they would have went soon after, so we're replacing all 3 of those heat pumps. Those units are ordered, and we're just waiting for receipt of those. BCAT, HVAC replacement in Building B. This is just an ongoing project that we've been working on for the past 8 to 9 months. It's just a continuing project. We're replacing things as needed instead of destroying our budget, so to speak, on that project. We're trying to pace ourselves on that to not replace more than we need to right now.
Replacement like package units or chillers, or what is?
The BCAT is package units, yes.
Yeah.
Northside Middle would be package units as well.
But as far as BCAT,
BCAT.
Is it possible that we could reuse that equipment?
Yes,
if
sir.
We needed? Okay, good.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We
Just
can
in case
reuse.
we get lucky
Yeah.
and
Yes,
get
sir.
a new BCAT, it'd be nice to use that.
And we're very cognizant of that as well.
Good.
As we're doing the project. We have a cracked boiler at Hidden Valley High School. Valley Boiler was awarded that project, and they're just waiting for parts. We do have redundancy at the school, so it's not an issue for heating, but we do want to repair the one that is cracked. Cave Spring Elementary roof, the library, that was the one roof on that entire school back in 2009. For some reason, the library didn't get replaced as part of that. We started developing some leaking issues in between the brick and mortar and the inside of the library walls. So we have awarded that project out to a vendor, and we're just waiting for some good weather to come in and replace that roof above the library. Hidden Valley High School, there was significant soffit damage, just aged soffit over the past, I guess, 20 years now. And so we have that about 90% complete. There is some work that needs to be done with some drywall in that soffit, but that's going to have to wait until the weather breaks for him to come back and complete that work. The division-wide classroom door handles and locks. This was a project that was started over the summer, and we're about 80% complete of replacing all the hardware and locks on the county classrooms. Automatic doors, these are just repair jobs that are ongoing at Glenver and Hidden Valley High School for some of the automatic doors. We are in year 3 since we've done our AHERA last, so we are updating our AHERA. It's required every 3 years to do so. So that's taking place now. It should be done by the end of February on time. HVAC or preventive, I'm sorry.
Could you explain what AHERA is?
AHERA, I'm sorry, that is our asbestos abatement plans. Okay. These are surveys that are in the schools. So every school has a survey, and it tells you where asbestos is in the building, and we inspect it twice a year, and then we have a professional come in every 3 years to do an official inspection. And that allows us to keep our buildings up to date when it comes to the current code. Stormwater pond maintenance, that's just something that ongoes every year. And then there's the completed projects. That, I don't know if you want me to go through every one of them, but they spot checking them. We've done some intercoms replacement at Glenver Middle School. We've done some minor abatement at Burlington, for instance. We replaced some rooftop unit at Cave Spring Elementary and Glenver Elementary. We've replaced some heat exchangers at Glenver Middle School and here also at Central, as you remember, the reason why this room is cold. We had a BAS crash on our system, so that was reprogrammed and completed. Mason's Cove had a water filtration system, and that's outside in the lawn area, and it hasn't been changed in 10 years since the school was built, so we took care of that here about 2 months ago. We also had a significant roof leak at Mount Pleasant, and so that has been repaired as well. The projects you see below that in the orange and unfortunately pink because of my printer, those are projects that are upcoming this July. Those are CMP projects that will start. That is 2021, 2022 money. And if you flip it over on the back side, that is, let's see, we have 2021 money and we have 21-22 money starting July 1st. So all those projects will be added to our project list come this summer, but that is what's scheduled to continue work. And as you can see, there's some big projects in there, such as the Hidden Valley Middle School cooling tower replacement. We have a chimney issue at Mount Pleasant that's going to be fixed. William Byrd Middle is getting significant upgrades to their HVAC system, as is Clearbrook continues. And then we also have a significant amount of plumbing work that's going to be taking place at a couple schools.
Are these replace sinks, faucets, and fixtures? Is this us migrating to touchless?
Not on the sinks. Not at this time. It's not.
Okay.
This is just aged 20, 30, 40-year faucets that need to be replaced.
But all the paper towel dispensers are now touchless.
Yes, sir. We've installed almost 1,700 paper towel dispensers that are touchless. And we're at the point that on this next round of CARES Act money, when it becomes available, we'll be able to finish. Every school has them now. Every restroom has them. But we're going to go back, and what we did is we split them up to make sure we had those in the spaces. But we still do have some that have the touch handles or the pull handles, and we're trying to get away with all those completely. So the next round of funding, we have a minimal amount that we have to buy, but we can do that and then be completely complete with the touchless paper towel dispensers. So the next page, the top label is minor capital projects. This is the money you gentlemen fund to us from the minor capital account. There's also some major capital projects. Quickly, the streaming projects are up and running at Northside High School in Glenver. That's the Pixelot systems. The team that was doing that installation had a COVID outbreak, so they've been on pause for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks Friday. They're coming back Friday to finish Byrd and Hidden Valley High School, and then they'll follow up with Cave Spring High School next week. So, and then those gyms will be complete at the middle to end of next week, and then they'll move to the press boxes. So we have that on the ready for football season on the, I guess, the 22nd.
When you say they'll be complete, the floors you're talking about?
I'm sorry, say again?
Well, you said Byrd and Hidden Valley and
the Pixelot gaming system, the live streaming service.
I got you.
Yes, sir. That'll be done for. They'll be completed on Friday and be turned over to the ADs.
Okay.
To be able to operate. Cave Spring High School. We're just wrapping up all the cement, all the little things you have to do at the very end of a project. Just trying to clean things up, get things done. But the punch list is, it's really insignificant now. Most of the punch list items are things that the principal's requesting the schools to do that was not part of the contract for the contractor. And really, it's just little things. So we're just trying to fix a few things out there on our end. And so we'll be wrapping that project up and be able to close it out this spring. William Byrd High, exciting news. We're through the schematic phase, and I will be providing you more information on that in the next week to 10 days. But we have a building layout that meets the program for the school. And as a matter of fact, it provides Ms. Newcomb an additional 2 classrooms that she did not know she would need. It's the design. I guess we've had 3 or 4 meetings with the architects on site, and then multiple phone calls. But the program's been met, and the principal and her assistant principal, they're ecstatic over this. The staff is ecstatic just because they've been heavily involved in this whole process, between meetings, supplying the architect's sketches and drawings. We had someone do a drawing, I think it was at the chorus director, maybe choir director, provided a drawing, and the architects liked it better than their own, and so they went with him. So really, they're taking part in the whole process, and I think the excitement's really starting to build over there. And as these schematics, now what we're going to move into is design drawings. So now is the work where IT department gets involved, or the electrical work gets involved, HVAC. This is where the infrastructure of the building starts taking place into those schematic drawings. They're still planning on having these drawings 80% complete by mid to late April. Looking for a building permit in May, and probably to start digging dirt in late May, early June. So that we're still on schedule for that right now. Any questions about Byrd while I just hit on it? Okay, great. And I will provide you guys all some design drawings. We're going to create a web page for Byrd to put this information out, so it's available to everyone. So just going through this list again, the things that are not highlighted are things that are ongoing, such as the track at Oak Grove. We've done everything we could with the funds that we have right now. You know, we tore down the dugouts in the building, and we've put up new dugout with fencings. We're actually going to go back and put roofs on those this spring. But as for a track, that's going to require additional funding, and the principal is going to have to request some of that funding through Parks and Rec for their next grant period that comes up.
Do we know what the ballpark, what it would cost to complete that track?
In the past, on average, on the 4 or 5 that I've done, we've always been between that $14,000 and $20,000 range.
Okay.
She's no longer, that track is no longer than any of those others, so it's going to fall in that window, and a lot of it's going to be driven by what the price of asphalt is at the time. And if we go, a gravel pathway initially, maybe she can get that in, have a gravel a walkway or walk, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we can come back paving later. So there's still ways to piecemeal that project to get to an end point.
The key is getting some grant from Parks and Rec.
They're $5,000, so and they have to be matching, so she would have to provide $5,000. So if she had $5,000, then Parks and Rec was to grant her $5,000. She's a little more than halfway there, probably. And so you're looking at 2 years of that, and then maybe she has some PTA funds. That's going to have to be a discussion that we have about how to move forward.
I know a lot of elementary schools are kind of hurting, with the lack of fundraising, and they never have the funding that the middle and the high schools do. So.
real quick.
Yes, sir.
While we're there, we did, was it Green Valley or somewhere else we did
walking
came up with
path?
some extra funding, or they had some funding and we helped.
Herman L. Horn, we did one years and years ago.
Well, but we just recently did. Anyway, my point is we're that close on that amount of money. Maybe there's a way we can, because I mean those walking tracks, I know at our schools are, man, they are used. They're a part of the community. So anyway,
we can definitely research that and figure out we can get a hard cost on it and see what we need to do from that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So a lot of these are projects that Mr. Keita developed whenever he did his tier work, and so as you can see, a lot of these are ongoing. A lot are complete. I'd be more happy to answer any questions about you have on here. I don't want to take up too much time and go through every one. If you flip over, there's even a more extensive complete list on the back end of this. But that is what we're doing on the construction and maintenance side right now with CMP money and minor capital money, just so you have an update.
Mr. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, do you still have open positions?
We have one open position in the maintenance department. It's an HVAC position.
And have you got all the vehicles that you need?
Right now we do. Right now we are in pretty good shape with some repairs that we've had. I say we're in good shape because we have vehicles that we're utilizing. There are plenty of those vehicles that are in 200,000+ miles range and need to be replaced because we're putting a lot of maintenance into them. But right now, yes, we have vehicles for the personnel that needs them. Yes, sir.
So we're not sending out 2 people when it's just one job?
No. I think I confused everyone last time when we discussed that. What we're trying to do is if we have multiple people going to one job, we're trying to contract and let them travel to that spot and utilize and have some pool vehicles that other people can use, because there are a lot of jobs, HVAC jobs, for instance, where 2 people are required. So it doesn't hurt to have the 2 HVAC folks go out together on a job and let someone else utilize another vehicle at that time. So right now we don't have a shortage. We had a truck from here at Central that we're able to send back over to maintenance, and they're utilizing that. We've also been able to clean up some of the vans and get them operational and running. But we do, I mean, I don't want to get away from the fact that we do need to replace probably 10 or 12 of these vehicles as fast as we can, but right now we're making them work.
That's, if you just remind the board, that was all put in the actual fleet replacement plan for the first time ever, that's last year. So just highlighting the importance of finding a way to fund that.
Yes, and we have the fleet replacement plan, and we've already excitedly started looking at vehicles and pricing and things like that using July 1 money coming up this year. So we're going to jump into that immediately when it becomes available.
Chris, are you at a point at some time where you can share with the board what your thoughts are on organizing your group?
Sure, I think it might come up here in just a little while when we discuss the budget.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, the 2.03, consideration of allowing middle school and/or high school fall sports teams to play a district or league schedule. Dr. Segal.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. So I'd like to give a little bit of background information to open this up for discussion for allowing middle school and high school sports teams to play a district schedule. First of all, we're talking about fall sports, which would include competition cheer, cross country, football, golf, and volleyball for the high school teams. So we currently have 3 districts that our schools play for. We have Blue Ridge District, and that is where Northside and William Byrd belong. And currently in the Blue Ridge districts, all teams but one have decided to play a district schedule. So what that would look like for Northside and William Byrd is using football as an example, because they have a low contest number. You can only play 60% of your schedule, so that's basically 6 games for football. So if we use them as an example, in their Blue Ridge district, there are, if you take out the team, there's one team who currently is not going to play. So unless that team changes their decision, Stanton River, and gets into the Blue Ridge district, Northside and William Byrd will have to find 2 games outside of their current district schedule. They already have fulfilled one of those games, but they would need one more. So the Blue Ridge District, even if we did play district play, they currently do not have a full schedule. They would have to find one replacement game if Stanton River does not return to district play. For the River Ridge District, that's where Cave Spring and Hidden Valley belong. And currently all of those teams are playing with district play. However, Montgomery County is also having the same discussion we're having today, determining whether they're going to play county schools only or if they're going to play a district schedule. So if Montgomery County makes the decision for their schools to play in county only, then that means our Hidden Valley and Cave Spring would open up 2 games, which they could in return pick up Northside and William Byrd to balance that out for them. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I just wanted you to be aware of that in the district schedule. They're not solid. There's going to be some movement there, and it all depends on who plays and who doesn't.
How about Three Rivers? Is that
okay? The Three Rivers is full. Everybody in the Three Rivers is playing, so they have a full schedule. So it just depends if the River Ridge, if all those teams, if Montgomery County makes the decision that they're going to play the district schedule, and so do we, that means Cave Spring and Hidden Valley have a full schedule as well. So then it would go back to Northside and William Byrd would be the 2 schools that they've already had 1 game filled. They may need 1 additional game filled. However, there are teams out there that are looking for games. I know the VHSL has said that they're also going to post a site for ADs of all the schools who have open games so they can match up with each other for those teams who have holes in their schedules.
You can imagine how thrilled we'd be to travel. So I hope we're going to stick to what we had talked about earlier.
Yeah. So we're coming down to really 2 options. One option is that we play the district schedule, and that 60% of their district schedule is what they would play. And so when we decide to play a district schedule, we follow by district protocols. So what happens is all of these 3 districts will get together, all the ADs in those districts and the principals. They will come up with the protocols that they agreed to follow in each of those districts. Those protocols would be, cleaning protocols, the number of spectators, how they're going to handle the spectators. They can't go over 25 because that's the limit currently, but the district will decide what that 25 will look like. They could decide that no spectators. Each district could have a different ruling on that. So that's how those decisions are made at the district level. We're also hearing that there's some fluctuation in what they're going to do with football for outdoor activities. We heard on a call today from a member from the VHSL that possibly what they're going to do is give each school 2 tickets for each child on the MEL, which means you actually have to be on the roster. So the school would get 2 tickets per child. They've also made the statement that so if it's totally based on, it's not based on home or away, it's based on the number of kids that you carry on your roster. So that's the recommendation they're making. The question was asked, if a school division has an agreement that they do not allow spectators, then what happens? So the school division can make that decision. That means no one would allow spectators at those events. But if a school division does not have that in place, then they would follow the VHSL's recommendation of 2 tickets per student on the MEL. So most likely what will happen is our districts, if we decide to play district play, they're going to follow that MEL requirement of the 2 tickets, and we'll probably accommodate that as that's the VHSL recommendation. If in the district schedule, if we do play a district schedule, then of course after the district you move on to region, you move on to state, and there's a protocol in there, it's called the +1. Basically what that means, if you do not make region playoffs, you are allowed to pick up 1 more game after the teams keep advancing, and if you're left behind, you get to pick up another team to play an additional game if you choose to do so. So the second option is that we play an in-county schedule like we did for winter sports. The difference there is, of course, we control all the protocols, and they would all be consistent. And each person, well, and then what would happen there is the same thing that happened this time. we had to go to our regions and ask permission to join the region since we did not play a full district schedule. What happened this year is both of our regions agreed that it was an all-in region, and they allowed all of us to advance to region play. It's way too early to know what decision a region would make, so we're kind of gambling a little bit with that because today the VHSL did tell one of the regions that it is the region's decision. Just so you know how that works, the region is made up of the principals of all the schools in that region, and they're the ones who vote. So it all comes down to principals voting on who's in the region tournament.
So let me see if I understand.
It is a season-by-season vote.
Let me see if I understand this correctly. So with respect to winter sports, the VHSL said it was okay that we were only going to play within our county and that they would allow us to go to playoffs. You're saying that may not be the case with fall sports?
So the VHSL puts the region in charge of the region.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't oversee the region. The decisions are made by the principals of that region. So those principals of that region, because there were so many teams not playing in winter, it was one of those things that originally you had to play that 60% schedule, and then so many teams couldn't get a 60% schedule in. There were so many changes, and so few teams were playing that they changed all the rules. And basically, our regions that we play for made the decision that all teams are in. If you're playing, we're putting you in the tournament. So that's what happened with winter sports. Fall sports moving forward, it's a little bit different picture because more of our teams are playing in our districts. So we're just taking a little bit of a chance. I mean, we would like to think that if the region allowed us to do this in the winter, they would allow us to do this again in the fall. However, we're banking on the votes of those principals in each of those regions.
So, the downside to not allowing our teams to play a district schedule is that they could lose the opportunity to play in the playoffs depending on how these principals vote.
Exactly.
That's the risk.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that we all understood that's the risk.
Right.
What's the, Mr. Chairman, do we have a drop dead date on when we kind of need to make that decision?
So in the winter, the region didn't make the decision until, a week or two before region started because we just got that answer. So what will happen is, I think what they're probably going to do is they're going to watch to see, how many teams are actually playing, look to see how the season's going to make a determination. But I would say that decision is going to be made later into the season.
But when would we ultimately need to decide? Are we going
for us.
Yeah, are we going to mirror what we did
Yes.
with winter sports? Are we going to?
Our contest begin February 22nd, so we're pushing it.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to decide by when? The next board meeting?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We can't do it today.
Yeah, next board meeting.
Yeah,
I don't
the schools
think
are going to have to get together and make a schedule accordingly,
Right.
so
Mhm.
they definitely need time to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we play in county, then the district teams we need to release them and let them go build their schedules as well.
Just a clarifying question. So, because you said that the district ADs and the principals make up the rules and the protocols for the play, and of course, I guess an individual district could have their above and beyond. So what is happening currently regarding like face masks? Because I know that varied from school division to school division.
Yeah, it does vary. I will say two things on that. One is we just went to a swim meet in Christiansburg Aquatic Center, and I've heard very favorable response from that it was the safest meet that they have seen. And that Christiansburg did a very, very nice job following all the protocols. So, that's a hard one to manage, and it sounds like they managed it very well. Christiansburg is hosting a lot of our winter sports activities, so Montgomery County also has a rule that you have to wear a mask at all times when you play. Roanoke City has that same rule. Salem does as well. So what it's going to come down to is some of the protocols could be tighter than even our protocols. But whatever the district decides is what you will follow at all of the games. So if the district gets together and 3 schools say they want to wear masks, but 4 say they don't, well, majority rules and they don't. So that's how those meetings go. So the good thing is we have 2 representatives in each one of the 2 districts, and then of course Glenver is by themselves from the Roanoke County Schools. But we do have 2 members who can, 2 principals who can talk about the protocols and make suggestions and recommendations in each of those groups.
It'd be interesting if we had 5 votes in the same district, wouldn't it? But anyway.
Yeah.
What, at this point, what would your recommendation be?
Well, there's 2 different sides of it. It worries me about taking the risk, because I have heard there are regions who have voted to keep teams out of the region play. Not our 2 regions, but there is a region in the state who did vote that. So it worries me a little bit that it may come across looking like, we've played our winter sports in county, but now we're going to let them go play, region and state, but then we're going to pull back in and take care of ourselves. But then, it looks a little bit like we're, and we are, of course, we're going to take care of ourselves, but that might rub people the wrong way. So I'm a little bit worried about that when it comes to that vote, because they're scrambling to find games in some situations, and we're not making that easy for them. So that worries me a little bit. However, on the health perspective, of course, I think it's better that we play in county because, one, we're not traveling as far. We are in total control of all the protocols. We can call each other out if the protocols aren't where they need to be because we should all know them. The checks and balances are just better if we play each other. So there's two sides to that story.
You're telling me regions have already made a call for winter or for fall sports?
For winter.
Oh, for winter sports.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair.
Nobody's made that call for fall sports yet.
No.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Isn't it a reasonable expectations? fall sports. Is it February? We've got some that are starting practice February 4th, and from a district level, when we talk about, you had mentioned that it's going to be the districts that will have kind of one protocol, right? What are the early discussions? I feel like, with only a few days left before fall sports, I feel like these protocols should be public already. Are we?
Yeah. They actually were supposed to meet today, so they pushed their meeting off to Thursday. So I know one of the districts, they're meeting on Thursday. So I think they've all been waiting. They're waiting for us in Montgomery County to make a decision, is what they're waiting on.
I understand that. But I feel like that's putting the cart before the horse. I feel like if we were going to make an informed decision on, are we going to do in county or are we going to go district wide, we need to know what the district protocols are going to be. Isn't that fair?
Yeah.
And then there's the argument that if we're truly worried about all, everything, is that a big enough consideration to change our minds? So.
Yeah.
Let me. This has got to be incredibly confusing to people who might be listening and watching as we think about these things, because I'm confused, and I just want to kind of walk through the history, the way I see it, as to how we got to where we are right now. Is that we did, and I've said this several times now as the reason why I shifted my position, but we did realize that we wanted some sense of normalcy for our students who love sports and athletics. And so we as a board came up with a way to do that, we thought, and with some control over the health aspect of it. And so we said, look, let's let our kids play. And we started off with high school. At the last board meeting, we said we're going to expand that to middle school. But the reason why we chose in district only is because we thought we had the most control in keeping our kids safe and not deviating too far from the health department guidelines, because that's what we did. We deviated from the health department guidelines, and we all probably got 1 or 2 emails about that. And so now now we're being, and so the reason, at least I did that, is I wanted to have our kids have some sense of normalcy, some organized sports, and to play, our own high schools and middle schools. I thought, at least if it's truly about letting our kids have some sense of normalcy, that was the answer. Now, if this thing is morphed into something else, like, we want our kids to play, we want them to go to the playoffs, and it's about competition again and winning more so than just the health aspect of it, that's where it's starting to get a little confusing, is that our rationale for doing what we did was to kind of control it. And so that's why I'm a little confused. I'm not confused, I'm just torn as to which way to go. To tell you the truth, and I get we're all going to need to decide this by the next. When's our next board meeting? Is
next
that
Thursday?
Yeah. So next Thursday, this will come up as an action item, a decision as to in district or within Roanoke County schools, or allow district play as basically normal. That's the decision point that we have to make and think about.
The protocols.
And so maybe that'll give us a time to get the protocols.
Yeah, I can ask them for that.
We need
to have that, so
we need to
can make
understand
an
that,
informed
right?
decision.
But that's the decision point.
Now, you said, excuse me, you said Montgomery County is making their decision, but they only have 2 schools there, correct? I mean,
4, yeah.
that are in these divisions?
No. But
Yeah, I was going to say that are in, I mean, they have Auburn, but that doesn't really come into play, and they've got, it's just Montgomery County and Blacksburg, correct?
Christiansburg, Blacksburg.
Christiansburg, Blacksburg.
Yeah.
And
then Central, the Montgomery. Eastmont.
Yeah.
And Auburn.
Pulaski, Salem, I'm thinking River Ridge District.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do their...
Yeah, they're fine.
They're going to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that this makes it any less perplexing in terms of what to do, but I just what my stance has been, a recommendation from the get-go. But the board decided to allow the postseason play for winter sports. To the point that, this is just my opinion, but to the point that some folks might be upset or see it as a contradiction that we only do in-county play for regular season, but we allow postseason. I would just propose that does not need to be a contradiction. Just because the more you play, the postseason is one thing, and you understand why you want to allow that, but certainly the in-district play during the regular season, it does create more situations in which you're mixing with other schools and so forth in terms of contact tracing and everything else. So I would just offer that I don't think that a stance, I'm not trying to sway one way or the other, but I don't think a stance to say that we're going to do in-county or fall sports needs to be seen as a contradiction to what we already decided as far as allowing post play, if that makes sense. I think
No, actually,
it's two different things.
It's not a contradiction, but there's been sort of a rule change. We knew that that we were going to be allowed to do playoffs when we made the decision, because we knew that. Now there's a new wrinkle here.
Oh, sure.
And so at least this board, if we followed what we did with winter sports, we would say, okay, we'll play within Roanoke County schools only, and we're also going to allow you guys, just like we did with fall sports, to compete. But now that's out of our control now. Right. We don't have that control.
There's no guarantee, right?
That's the risk.
Right.
But isn't that a little bit hypocritical and not all the way around if they wouldn't allow us because we were being safe within the county? You know what I mean? So is it really about the pandemic? Is it really about winning, the championship? What is it really about? So, to me, that's a little bit, have a hard time going back and forth. So it's hard for me. Mr. Chairman, could I add?
Sure.
So the band and other extracurricular activities, any discussion about, because the point was brought up, and it is a good point. When Dr. Hughes spoke, it's not just, well, we got to get sports guys back, because they're having, it's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we stand with thoughts or regards to that?
So there's a webinar tomorrow from the VHSL, but we heard a little bit of information of what's going to be shared on that webinar tomorrow. The idea that cheer and band members will not be allowed into football games. So that changes things for us quite a bit. So we were hopeful that we could adjust our numbers to a point, maybe not bring in as many parents and use some of those tickets to bring in cheer and band. But we'll have to wait for that webinar, because I've heard it secondhand to make, before I know for sure what the VHSL is saying. But it was as if we could not count them in that number.
But
so we're going to have to rethink that whole plan.
I guess, and I apologize, I kind of didn't explain. I'm talking about away from sports, that we're having this discussion about.
I think those are things we can control as as a school system. I got a nice email today from high school students asking, could it be a choir concert? And my response was, love for that to happen. So I think that, those are things that we need to explore to try to find ways to happen. So, it may not be the marching band during the routine at a halftime show,
right,
but can they perform, for their parents or something like that? We certainly want to, explore those opportunities.
Sure. And so, even clubs or, and I'm not talking about sports, I'm talking about outside those, realms. So, maybe that they can just get together, socially distance in the auditorium and have something, whatever it is, maybe,
I would say most of the schools do have like clubs operating and
so
so forth.
So they're okay.
Different ways.
So they're good.
They've got some things going on.
That's okay. And then, real quickly, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. COVID update. Haven't heard anything about increasing numbers. Hopefully that's decreasing.
No, numbers are coming down.
Okay.
Right
Good.
before I walked in here today.
Let's publicize that.
Yeah, we were down to 10%, 10 point something, but yeah, we're definitely in the last 2 weeks we've come down quite a bit. I looked at the state map, and two of the localities have actually turned orange. So we were all red. So we are coming down. It looks good. Our numbers internally are coming down. Our quarantine numbers are coming down. Our positivity numbers are coming down. And it is following the trend that we were projecting, that after we get past the holidays, the numbers would start to come down. Also taking into consideration the vaccines, teachers are going for their second dose of vaccines next Friday. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Until spring break.
That's
then we'll
right.
do it again. Mr. Chairman, could we have an update at the next meeting that we get that publicized, that we
Sure.
so that we can.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think
Okay.
thank you.
Anything else for Dr. Segal?
This decision doesn't need to be made today.
No.
I'm not. Are you prepared to make a decision today? I'm not.
I could.
No, we'll set it up for. We have a week to think about it and see what the protocols are that we've asked for.
And the district principals are getting together, you said Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
At least I know of one district. I've got to find out about the other two.
And
They should have an idea, because they met for the fall, and my guess is their protocols aren't going to sway too much from the winter to the fall.
I
So
think I need
they
to
would be
Thursday,
similar.
too, because I'd like to hear from Tammy and Jason, because they're going to, I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Okay.
There's the middle school league also is part of that. Just same kind of discussion though.
Yeah, same kind of discussion. There's enough teams that are playing to fill the league schedule, or we could play an in-county schedule with middle school as well. Either
Mr.
way.
Chairman, could we at least agree on that, you think?
On what?
On the middle school? Do you think we could, because, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have a postseason, right?
No,
Yeah,
they don't.
So could we, maybe they could at least get started if we could agree on, even if it's Thursday, on, in county or out of county.
Yeah, that's
For
what I
middle
said
school.
we're going to do. Yeah, we're going to decide that next week at the school board meeting. That's going to be an action item.
Right. So last week you decided to let them proceed with fall sports and to assume to be in county now unless you expand it.
Yeah.
That's where it stands right now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
For the middle school league, it's like Roanoke City teams don't do that, but most of the ones in the area. So Andrew Lewis in Salem,
Franklin County,
Ben Franklin, Central Academy, Reed Mountain, and then Clifton Middle, I guess, is also
Clifton.
from Allegheny County. Yeah.
For middle schools, I'm good.
All right. Anything else for Dr. Segal? All right. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the 2021-2022 budget work session. Maybe would do you need to take a quick break or anything?
Sure, if you want to. This will go on for a while, so.
Yeah. Why don't we adjourn just for about 5 minutes, if you don't mind? Okay. Pardon the brief intermission, but some of us are over 55. Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
And I'm never succinct when I come up here for the budget. So we're here for our second budget work session this year. And we are going to go over the compensation, the benefits, departmental requests, and the remaining timeline. So although it's a short agenda here, some of these items may enjoy longer discussion. So first, let's take a look at compensation. So last year, if you recall, back in March, we had presented to you a budget, and it included the compensation study that we had gone through with Gallagher. And I just wanted to remind you kind of the basis of what that compensation study was and where we go from here. So first off, they did a job classification study. And so on the first chart here with the comp study bands, when Gallagher came in, they used and helped us implement a decision band method by which to categorize our employees. Their whole premise is that all employees make decisions, whether it's changing toilet paper in the bathrooms, which is a very task-oriented decision, and that will be in the far left-hand side of the bands, or if it's closing schools, like on Monday, like Dr. Nicely, and that would actually be off the band. He's not even on here. But the policy and the programming functions, the higher level decisions are off to the right-hand side. So the first part was to take a look at every job, what decisions they make. And in doing this, their thought was that every job should reflect the importance of how they are valued within the organization. And their importance is directly related to their decision making. So that's kind of the process behind all of setting this up. We went through and first coded everybody between the different color codes blocks going vertically. And then we looked to see going horizontally, the lesser decisions are up at the top and the more supervisory are down at the bottom of the bands. So that was just a refresher of what our comp study bands are. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Those kind of things, so they help us more define those to make sure we truly were categorizing people in the correct places. And so as you see, this is the chart of basically every position we have in Roanoke County Schools and where they fit in the bands. And again, this is just a refresher of last year.
This is what you had approved last year before we had to roll back. So then the second part of the comp study was to take a look at our scales and ensure that we had marketability with other school systems and other governments around us. So they did a survey. Any position that they did not get adequate information from the survey, they looked at specific market research to fill in any gaps, and they helped us design the scale. So the top of the page is the scale as we showed it to you last year. This is the support and admin scale. The biggest difference between this and what we're on currently is that we are going back from a 25-step scale with a 2.33% differential between the steps to now a 30-step scale with a 2% differential between each step. So we're expanding this out to mimic the structure of our teacher scale. So that's the top portion, that's the admin and the support employees. The bottom, last few lines down at the bottom, although teachers were not a part of the comp study, we did go ahead and include adding 0.5% to the scale and just shifting it in this visual. And we ran numbers to see what it would look like to give all teachers a shift of 0.5% on the scale. The pages are color-coded, so the colors that relate to the band up at the top of the first page and the job classification kind of relates to the band there on here going across the horizontally.
And just to clarify one thing, the T numbers at the bottom, T1 means bachelor's degree for a teacher, T2 would be bachelor's plus 12, T3 bachelor's 24, master's is a T4, and then if a teacher has a doctorate degree, it's a T5. So we have 4 scales within our teacher scale, and that just clarifies what those are.
All right, if there are no questions, what we'll do is we'll move on to the costing. So last year, as was approved when we originally brought this to you in March, we were able to implement the study along with various components. And I just have the reference for you on the left-hand side just to show you what the numbers were, right? So on the right-hand side is what our estimate is for the needs this year. The first line you'll see is the 1.6 million. This represents the current year raise that was given with year-end funds. This does not equal exactly the amount that we asked for and needed for a couple reasons. One, we asked for funds to cover everybody, including nutrition and the grant funds. And so when we're costing these out, typically we only include the general fund. But since we got that money mid-year, we wanted to go ahead and help out the nutrition team, knowing that they were going to see some losses because of their where they're operating under COVID. So that's one reason why that's different. Another reason is just because when we project out these amounts, Mr. Bradshaw's team has already taken, if we know a group of employees are retiring, he's already converted those steps back to a median. And so we've already have a lapse inherent in projecting these out. And so we only needed 1.651 to cover the current year raise for the employees in the general fund. The next line represents getting everybody actually onto the comp study. And this came down slightly, and it makes sense that it would come down slightly because last year we had not given them a raise, and this year we gave them a raise. And so when we ran those numbers, it did come down slightly to 441,536 is what it would take to get everybody on the support and admin onto the comp study scale itself. So the next 2 lines are to convert all of the positions for bus drivers and bus aides to 5-hour contracts. This is what we hope to do in order to become competitive with all of our neighbors, because it is common for school systems to have the 5-hour contracts for our bus drivers. Currently, we run very specific contracts that are less than 4 typically, and certain routes will go higher. So what we will end up doing is having the transportation team route there will not be a route that is greater than 5 hours, because we don't want anyone to have to work that much. So we'll have all the routes kind of pulled back so that they're all very equivalent, and then everyone ends up with the extra funds. Then we won't have to provide the bus driver incentive and retention bonuses, and this is an ongoing increase. And so now what we do is we build in that ongoing increase with the scale for them the same way every other employee, and they're not just relying on a 1-year bonus. The next one is shifting the teacher scale. So I told you we had shifted that scale for the teachers. It ends up being 361, 130. The next 2 are what we calculated to first for teachers and then second for the support team. Now that we have everybody on the scale, providing them a 1-step increase. And then lastly, Jim and I talked, and last year he was able to feel comfortable with the $500,000 personnel lapse, and this year we pushed the envelope, and maybe an hour before we came in here, I really kind of pushed him to give me another $100,000 to just give us a little bit more money. So this is kind of what we're looking at right now. In total, and doing all of this piece for current employees, $3.9 million.
Just to complete the dots, and correct me if I'm wrong, one reason shifting this teacher scale, that half a percent would be to go with the step increase, which is typically 1.5%. So together, that would get us to that 2% that's currently in the governor's budget.
Were we getting money back from that, from the governor? You needed money?
In the current year? Yeah, I had discussed that before. They are holding us harmless, and so we're not going to get more than what we budgeted, but they're going to hold us harmless.
They are.
Mhm.
Okay.
So then benefits, as you know, we are self-insured for our health insurance, and we do participate in the administration and the plan design with the county and the jails. So when decisions are made about either the design of the plan or the facets of the plan, we do work together to come up with something that is agreeable for all of us. In the current year, the biggest thing that we looked at was currently we have, in the current year, a $200,000 stop-loss limit per claim. And so what this means, we want to increase this. We've worked with our consultant. We've gotten all the numbers. And for all three of the entities, the stop-loss is very individualized. So our piece, we can actually save, in real dollars, $263,509 off of our premium for that stop-loss insurance. Now, it gets a little fuzzy because, we really pay the claims as well. And so that savings gets eaten away by the possible claims that we're paying above 200 to 250. And the insurance consultant estimated our net savings, net of that piece, will be about $85,000. So it was still in our best interest to raise that risk a little, not a whole lot, but a little, in order to have some savings. So that's the biggest change. Everything else with the plan, the HRA, the rates, the co-insurance, the deductibles, everything else stays the same. And we also propose to leave rates the same for the employees as well. The well done is the same as well. With the well done, I found it very interesting. We have current copays of $10, $25, and $40, and our plan is a very rich plan, and there are not very many employers that have that small of a tier level. Most of the tier levels start higher than that.
Did I understand you say we're looking at leaving everybody? I think that bears making sure we point that out. Has that happened? I don't think it's happened in the 5 years.
You know what, the premiums?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's actually the next slide, but that is where she's going.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that's what she said.
Yep.
Yeah, the words came out before I got to the slide.
Okay.
I was so excited to share that.
That's another big deal.
So actually, before I even get to that slide, there were a couple of plan changes. The health plan change that we incorporated, and these will all be helpful for our members. Live Health Online is expanding their services to cover the sleep medicine services. So that'll be a little more benefit for our employees. And then there were 3 legislative actions that were implemented as well. One was to limit the member cost share payment for prescription insulin. Another was to prohibit the denial of a licensed clinical nurse specialist for services other than mental health. So what they're doing is they're saying they will reimburse, they will not deny reimbursement. And then the last one is for anyone who is prescribed formula or enteral nutrition products, they will also cover and reimburse the cost of the medical equipment, the supplies, and the services for feeding those items to the members. So you can see our health trends. This year, the consultant came back to us with a medical cost trend rate going down to 6% from 7.5%. However, our pharmacy trend rate has gone up, and that's what they're seeing around the nation as well. So that went from 6% to 8%. And we think that's more to the specialized medical concoctions for some of these more specialized treatments that are needed right now. So then, yes, this is the happy slide. This is, and in your book, your next two pages that face each other, that is representative of the full rate structure. It's very complicated because you have 10-month, 11-month, and 12-month employees, and you've got your different levels of coverage, and then you have wellness, you have non-wellness, and so it ends up being very cumbersome. So just on the board, I wanted to share, this is for a 10-month employee, so this would be a teacher, and it really, the most important thing is the box down here to the right shows that we are not increasing the rates for the employee. We're going to leave them whole. That's our recommendation to you. And the county is going to follow the same kind of process. So with the vision and dental, I'm not going to go into these much at all. You've got the kind of high-level pieces of the plan in front of you, just to remind you what it entails. Again, we are not planning for these, we are not self-insured. The vendor actually charges us a specific premium, and the vendor has held us whole through the next year. And so there are no cost increases there either. So that's a good thing for our employees.
And I mean, I just think that's a huge deal, you know, because I hear that, I'm sure y'all hear that a lot when you're talking to teachers or different ones. Hey, you know, you're eating up our step with, that's a big deal. That's a nice thing for this year.
Yeah, it's nice that we can do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's stemming from the actual claims are less because of the COVID. You know, I think with the dental and the vision, I think their claims are less too. I mean, the doctors have to, they're having to see less people, right, and less procedures, and so the costs are less.
Yeah.
And I think that this is how they're helping their customers. Our vendors are helping us by keeping rates lower. So the next section, and the first piece I'll go over, but the next section I've got each of the departments, and what you'll see is we took a look at, you know, for the past several years, what has not been funded, because, you know, we do have the unfunded request list, and oftentimes we'll put things on there, and we like to go back and revisit it every budget year. So the first slide, the left-hand column, the 2020 to 2021 deferral, this literally is where we came back to you after we were really happy and had a great budget, and then COVID hit a week later, and we had to come back and slash a lot of money. These are all of the pieces that we took out of the budget. So this is what we took away from departments, or most of this was transfers to, you know, our replacement funds. So this is what we took away. And so one of our first add backs we wanted to do was get our departments back to whole, get the replacement plans back up in the shape that they needed to be in. So on the right-hand side, you'll see us basically reversing what we did and putting the money back on the table for requests. The only numbers that are different is instead of showing the transfers to the replacement funds multiple times, I just went ahead and dropped in the transfer to the technology fund of $1.2 million is more than what we took out, because that's part of what we presented at last month's work session of what it's going to be needed to get them to make their payments next year. And then down at the bottom, the transfer to the instructional resources fund, we took $32,000 out, but as you recall, they actually built a textbook adoption plan for the following several years, and part of that is to get funding in there, and next year's piece was the 514. So those are the only two pieces that we adjusted the transfer itself due to the replacement schedules. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but just to point this out, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple of these things we had to take off of the budget last year, either through year-end funds or what have you. Like, for example, library books, I think the CT equipment. We actually were able to do those things this year using one-time money, but we do need to get them back in the budget
correct.
on the operating side.
Correct. I think we were able to fund all but maybe $50,000 or $60,000 worth of what we took out in the current year with the carryover. But the purpose here is to actually get it in their original budget so that it's ongoing, because we use the one-time funds. At the bottom of the page, we always like to share, these are the costs that we're going to have to pay regardless, and so we consider them the fixed costs. The first line item in this are vendor contracts, and we've got $210,000 sitting here. This number will be massaged a little bit. Mr. Lowe is working with our custodial vendor to get a more firm number, because, as you know, the federal government increased.
Minimum wage is increased for this coming summer, and then also again next January, which they're going to have to absorb. Minimum wage next January will be $11 an hour for their employees. And then there's just a standard inflation, I guess, on the upcoming new contract.
So we've got the regular inflation in here. We just don't have their extra amount that they need to cover their own payroll.
Susan, when are we going to start putting money in for the Glenver turf field replacement?
That's on a following slide.
Pardon me?
It is on a following slide.
Thank you. Okay.
So the joint capital funding, the $200,000, y'all well aware of that. That is to get us up to the 12-12-12 plan from the 10-10-10 plan. Flood insurance, this is something that we have to pay through my office, and the federal government imposes this. This is not a vendor contract, but it is something that the federal government requires us to pay, and they actually require us to pay 25% of what you paid this year. So whatever the bill was this year, we have to pay 25% more next year. And we're going to keep having to do that. So that is a very hefty. The majority of this is Burton Center. So if we didn't have Burton Center, we would definitely be able to free up some of this ongoing money. The only other school that is in a floodplain is Back Creek Elementary.
So when we say government imposed, that's the federal level?
Yes, sir.
So BCAT and Clearbrook are the only
Back Creek?
Back Creek are the only two
Yes.
in the flood, and so this is a result of those two.
Yes. So it's 3 buildings.
So that's 25% more than what we're paying currently.
Yes, sir.
So we're paying $200 now. Now it's $250.
And is that just, Mr. Greenway, you'll understand where I'm going with this. Is that just because we're a public entity that they require us to carry flood insurance? And I ask that on the personal side, unless the lender requires us to have flood insurance, which they always do. But if my home is free and clear and there's no mortgage against it, it's my right whether I want to carry flood insurance. So,
Well, this is not regular flood insurance. This is where you're actually in the flood zone. And so since these are buildings that are deemed by FEMA to be in flood zones.
No, I understand. Every property has to have a flood cert, to determine if you're in a flood zone, what portion of the property.
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking you is the government, because we're a school system, they mandate that we have flood insurance? Or do they mandate that local governments carry flood insurance on there?
I think they mandate anyone who owns it. But I can get the answer to that and follow up. I don't know that off the top of my head.
For instance, if you go to buy a house and it's in a flood zone, if you're paying cash, I don't have to buy flood insurance because I don't want it. That's what I think.
Right.
That's what yeah. So we own the school. It's paid for. Do we have to? That's $250,000 again.
We have no choice.
Huh?
We have no choice.
We have no choice.
We have
Okay,
no
that
choice.
answers the
That's
question.
what I was getting at.
I am positive.
Will we get more information in terms of clarifying who it's required of versus obviously private people?
But you know, a nice point to that is our discussion about BCAT. If it were to be brought somewhere like this and out of the floodplain, there's maybe 200,000, you know, that.
And that is a good point. What percentage of that 250 is at BCAT? I mean, what type of, if we were to move BCAT, heck, that pays for the joint capital funding for the 12-12-12.
No, yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Hey, let's write that one down.
Yeah.
I need bullet points for it.
I had that
We just need the, what's the reg or what's the statute that says that we have to pay flood insurance?
I'll get that to you. I know I just shared this tidbit with you. I feel like it was like $180,000 is
What's
BCAT.
that?
I was thinking it was about $180,000 was BCAT. Like it's not a small amount because they've got 3 buildings compared to.
Thank you.
Then the software transfer to the county to ComIT for our joint software programs, the global HR human resources system and the financial software system. Since we share those systems to keep our costs lower, when premiums go up, they share that with us. And that's our increase. And then a little bit of a decrease under this line item, we are moving adult ed out of the general fund into the grant fund for Mr. Sir, because it's not really, it's not operating money for them. It's really set aside, and they maintain it with tuition and a teeny little bit from the state. And so we're going to move that off to the grant fund to make it easier for them. So then we're going to go through the individual departments. And I've asked everyone to be kind of on hand if you have questions, but I'll start going through these. In the administration department, if you recall, we have taken a look at non-resident tuition in the past and whether reducing that amount will result in additional ADM. In 2019, we charged $2,863, and then in 2020 we dropped it to $2,100, and that's what we're still paying. So that's still something the administration department is considering and looking into. They sent some numbers over, and when we put this in place in 2020, the increase in students did not go up as much as prior years. But we did go up 17 students that year. Prior years, it was 36 and 24.
So really, we've already decreased it from 2,863 down to 2,100, currently to 2,100. So the question would be, do you want to further reduce that? This is probably not a good year to really gauge whether or not it's done anything as far as ADM. I mean, we've got about the same number of non-resident students, but obviously this does not help us unless we're attracting more students.
Since this is a work session, I think we ought to think about this one for a little bit. Is what was, if you go back to I believe the original or the rationale for having a tuition, it was during a time when we had enrollment that was really great enrollment, and there was a demand coming in, and now we have the opposite problem. So we have to really think about what's the cost benefit here of even charging tuition. Think about it. I mean, would we want to attract tuition free students from Salem, Roanoke, or wherever to help our ADM? Having a tuition, in my view, is a roadblock to that. So it's just something that I think we need to think about. And why are we even charging tuition? In an era where, what are we down, 300 people? 302 this year, right. Think about that.
And I think, you know,
The
intuitively.
only thing I would say in this year is being down 302. I don't know that you can look at this year, can you?
Yeah, but we've been declining
We
for
have
10
been,
years
but-
now,
but
right?
this year, I think,
And
is
so
phenomenal.
you have to think, why did we begin charging tuition? I think we know the answer to that. Now look where we are now with 10 years of declining enrollment, and do we really get that much revenue out of our tuition? That's what I'm saying, versus what we could get if we had that $5,000 of ADM from the state.
Does the $5,000 of ADM cover the cost of educating that child? I mean, I think you want to get taxpayers riled up. You start letting kids come into our school system for free when our taxpayers are paying what they're paying.
Well, it's a math exercise. So let's see.
Yeah, that's the point, is that we're getting $5,000 a kid. Now,
Does that $5,000 cover that education?
Well, that's what we need to know.
Well, I think
But
your
we know
tipping
it's not.
point is when
You have-
having more students starts to cost you more because you have to hire more teachers, for example. But if you've got room, right, you're not spending extra to hire more teachers, and you have room to absorb more, then it's a win, you know. But I mean, I think intuitively you're never going to see that really tip as much as you want to really get that ADM benefit until you get the cost down pretty significantly. I mean, 2,100 is not. We reduced it slightly before, but until you get that down under 1,000, I don't think you'll start to see that move a whole lot. So the question
it's
becomes.
still our prerogative on who we let in, right? I mean,
Sure. Right. Yeah, exactly.
um,
You still have the same standards in terms of people in good academic standing, you know, discipline standing, attendance, and all those kinds of
we're
things.
obviously requesting transcripts, you know,
Sure.
academic and behavioral, and I mean, so.
I do think we need more data for that.
We might need to, I mean, to have that discussion, we probably need that budget number to know currently what is that revenue that goes into it, because it is revenue you potentially can't count on.
Right.
Do we have a standard kind of metrics when we're, I mean, I know we're looking at size, it's, not, we're letting students from other districts, what's it gonna do to our budget, do we need to, but, I mean, when we're talking about, looking at transcripts, looking at behavior and everything, I mean, do we have some sort of metrics so that we're, even across the board?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is.
I don't want to get caught in a position where we're, where we may be discriminating against, letting one student in versus another. Or,
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good question. So they're not, I would say, objective measurement, like metrics like written down, but as a safeguard, to your point, certainly it goes to the principal first for their recommendation, but there's a backup behind that, and we started that when I was in that role, but Dr. Stegall would sort of be that safeguard to make sure that principals are making the decision based on the right thing versus, if we're saying, for example, we don't have room, we have to prove it. Don't say you're denying somebody because we don't have room. Show me what your class sizes are, because we want to make sure there's equity in a level playing field.
Gotcha.
And I guess we're thinking about in normal times, because we're maximizing all the space that we can now, right?
Oh, sure. Let's be like, right, when we get back to normal, right?
If we ever do.
Good point.
That's all I can think about.
Right.
Planning for the normal times to come.
Right. Yep. Okay, thank you.
She also has an increase in the administration allotment, which will go to the schools, and an increase in the athletic allotment that will go to the school. Another program that she runs out of her office is the A-STEP program, which I think has been successful, and we have staffed a teacher in there this year. There is plans that as we get back to normal, and we may need to hire an IA. So we have a IA with their FICA added, listed, and then they want to look at possibly using one of their programs, Edgenuity, to help these students out as well. So there's other items on that list. So then, if we're done with administration, we'll move on to the instruction list. So on the instruction list, we've got various needs on here. The increase in staff allotment that was back in 2020, that's actually covered later on under the HR section. That's really for substitute rates and kind of goes hand in hand with that, so I probably should move that down. The library media databases at the elementary schools. So last year they had asked for that plus an allotment. I think they were able to fund the allotment themselves, and now they're just asking for the library media databases to help out the elementary schools. The elementary and secondary schools are looking to hire or have more timesheet costs for interpreters. And they are looking to increase the art material allotment that goes out to the elementary and the secondary schools. And then they wanted to add one more student or ensure that they had enough funding in their budget for summer governor school to cover the tuition so that they could have one student per academy in the governor school. So that was going to be an additional $5,000. Last year they had asked to increase the math supervisor contract by 20 days so that that would cover some of the summer work that is performed. Mr. Bradshaw and I went through, and what you're going to see where we had personnel costs in last year, Mr. Bradshaw and I went through and budgeted out as if we fully implemented and gave a step. And so this number, we wanted to increase to that amount, just making that base assumption. So you were looking at, when you looked at compensation dollars and these dollars, they were the same makeup of money. And then they also would like to increase the summer school timesheet rate. They want their plans last year. We had already increased the summer school timesheet rate from 20 to 25 in March, and then I think we backed off after COVID hit. What they would like to do is add an additional $5 to that for this summer, because we all know there is a grave level of learning loss, and there is also a high level of teacher burnout right now. And so they're hoping that if they can incentivize the teachers, instead of $20 an hour, giving them $30 an hour, with the intention that 5 of that will be a recurring cost each summer. And then the other 5, we have an additional pot of CARES money that we could dip in to help fund that. So that's what they're looking at for summer school to help out our students. So those were some of the instructional needs. And if there's no questions, we'll move on. So under the finance department is where I actually have the transfer, since it's I have all the transfers in my department now, the transfer to the Glenver High School turf replacement, as you had inquired about, Mr. Butzer. And then everything else is already, like I said, I didn't want to break up the other transfers to the replacement fund, so I just included that above.
Is there a reason that, and I guess maybe Case Spring is 25 and these are 40, is there a different time replacement?
So Cave Spring was Bogle was the first one, and that was agreed to at 25, and part of that was paid by the schools and part of that was paid by the county, and so it was 50 in total. When we came to replace the actual turf, we didn't need quite that much, and so they backed it down to 40 in total instead of 50 in total. The idea being that we get 20 from the county and we would hand in 20 as well. We just haven't, we've had the discussions on the William Byrd turf, but I don't think we've come to a consensus with the county yet on that. I know that prior directors have spoken with them about that. And in fact, I think it may have been put in there for William. It's already in there for William Byrd, I think. I can't remember. But we backed off on that because of the COVID. And so we're looking to hopefully split that 40 so that our our half would be 20, but we wanted to go ahead and get 40 on the books to show that we needed the total transfer to be 40.
I think, Mr. Ray, we also, ended up squeezing an extra 2 or 3 years out of the Bogle field, almost 13 years versus the original 10-year time frame. So,
And that's with 2 high schools
Yeah.
using it.
Exactly. So,
Plus, it's a newer technology, too, with what we have now. So they may last longer. You never know.
All right. So then if we continue on down to the Human Resources Department, basically 3 big items in here. We're increasing pay rates, which, we started to look at all of this back in 2020. Last year we were hoping to implement it with the comp study, and this year we're hoping to finally be able to implement it with the comp study. The other is the full-time health benefits for our bus drivers, our bus aides, and our nutrition associates. I did not recost them out because the cost I costed them out a couple of years ago, and we have not changed our insurance rates. And so the rates are going to be the same, and costing those out from year to year. Still something we would like to do whenever the time is right, for certain. And then the last thing is back in, was it 2018 or 19, was when we split the sub rate to, if you were
I believe that's right.
I'm going to let you speak on this.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to let you speak on this one.
Yeah, we changed it. Well, we've made several changes over the past couple, this year as a matter of fact. We were allowing 18-year-olds and those kind of things. Well, before we split it where if you were a degreed, you made a certain amount. If you were non-degreed, you made another amount. So we made that determination to try to become more competitive. Now what we're looking at here, and we've had some discussions about and looking at surrounding areas of increasing our sub rate to make sure that we're competitive with all the areas around us. And so here, this increase would be $10, not just for teachers, but also include our nurse substitutes and our IA substitutes, which we're having trouble, whether you're degreed or non-degree. So it's basically moving every single one of those scales by $10. Again, to keep us competitive, and we know the importance of substitutes. We've got to have them in our building. So that's why that's on there for consideration.
Mr. Bradshaw, do you think that trouble is because of the financial aspect of it this year? I would like to think that it's more COVID related than it is.
I agree with that. In the past, we've had trouble filling just due to rates, and that was one of the reasons we made an adjustment 2 years ago or whenever it was. I feel this year it's more of a people either want to come in and are willing to substitute or they don't want to. I do feel like when we get back to normal, as Mr. Ray said earlier, I do feel like that we need to make sure we're competitive with the surrounding counties like Salem and Roanoke City and Botetourt and those kind of things to make sure that we can still keep pulling the substitutes. Because honestly, we have the same pool of subs as most of those counties around us. So that's why that's on there. But to answer your question, this year, I truly believe it's because you want to or don't want to. And the financial aspects, I don't think would make a change if we implemented it tomorrow. That's just my opinion.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but on the teacher's sub rate, increasing by $10 an hour, if we could do it, would make us even with a couple of our neighbors.
That's correct.
Whereas currently, I mean, we're competitive, but currently you've got at least one neighbor, maybe two, who are about $10 ahead. This would put us even.
That's correct.
So that's everything for the Human Resources Department. Moving into the Technology Department. So there was discussions for the digital radio replacement fund transfer, and they started a couple years ago, and I think there's something we still are looking into doing. We just have not had the ability to implement the dollars into the budget for that. So that's still something on the radar. And the next 2 items for technology, Jeff has asked for some additional positions that will really help out his IT department and his IT RTs, and ensuring that he has, at the middle level, 1 technician per school, as opposed to 2 middle schools sharing with other schools. So I think that's really helpful when you have that 1-to-1 laptop actually at the middle schools. And then with the ITRT positions, reducing the support at our elementary schools from 3 to 1, 3 to 1 to a 2 to 1 ratio. So this will just help his team. And you probably could say that a lot more eloquently than I could, Jeff. Do you have anything you would like to add?
Well, I mean, just on the ITRTs, you did a great job. Just so everybody knows, we share an ITRT at the elementary level, 1 for every 3 buildings. So this would give 1 for 2 buildings at the elementary level. And the technician positions would be for the middle schools that we have, that we're sharing technicians from central office. So if we provided those 2 schools with a technician, that frees up the shared resources from here to lower the amount of devices per technician.
Are these the technicians that kind of run like the depot
The depot.
at each school? Okay.
Yeah, so the 2 schools that are sharing central office people are Hidden Valley and Denver.
So then moving into the facilities and operations, we've broken these up into maintenance, transportation, and utilities. The first line item on here, so what you'll see is last year there was a request in here for $117,000 to go into the budget. And when Mr. Lowe came in and took a look at the budget, he was able to sharpen his pencil, and we've got the very specific needs on here for what he wants to use this year. So really the 123 and the 13, the emergency and contracted preventative and maintenance vendors. So that's to have some vendors on hand. So when their need arises, they can come out to our school right away.
This warrants, I think, a presentation from Chris when he's ready, because this is a big ask, and you're doing it because we've asked you to do things over the past few years. And so what Chris wants to present here is a way to maintain these facilities the way we've asked him to maintain them. And that's why I think this deserves maybe a presentation on what you have in mind, like you talked to me about a while back, and maybe it's changed since then, which is fine. But I think the board needs to understand what we're going to get as a result of this budget increase, and I think the board needs to hear that, because I think it's where we want to be, and maintaining these buildings the way that they should be. And so, rather than you explain this piece of it, I think you ought to, Chris, when you're ready. But I wouldn't.
I was going to actually yield the floor to him right now.
Okay, are you ready to do that now?
I can definitely give you a good overview so you can understand
Well,
what my intention
okay.
is. So,
Chris, Chuck's asking that you swap positions with.
Swap.
Particularly interested in how you think you should be organized.
No, I don't need. They got the budget up there. We can just explain it through the budget. Can you hear me? Okay. So our intent for our department is to get to less critical maintenance, going out and fixing reactively and problems that when things break down. Our goal is to get to be more proactive, to get to be more preventive is the word I'm looking for. And one of the ways that we feel like we can get preventive is we need to have ownership at our facilities. And one of the ways we provide ownership at our facilities is we divide up in our county system, we divide it up into 5 different areas. So 5 different zones, so to speak. The intent would be to have a MEP set up, a crew, so to speak, or a team at each zone. And to make this work to what Harley and I, Mr. Grimes, who's our new assistant director, has helped me out with this tremendously, is the intent would be to get to an APA 3 level. Now, we're APA 2 on custodial, but we feel like APA 3 is something we can get to pretty I don't want to say too quickly, but it's a reachable goal. I think that's the correct word. So one of the ways we have to what we need to do is we need personnel, and here's the reason why. For each of these zones, you have to provide at least one plumber, you have to provide at least one electrician, and you need to provide 2 HVAC positions. That's just to get the MEP people in each zone. And then we're also asking for a coordinator, a zone coordinator, which will be someone who has a knowledge of all those trades, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and would be the coordinator of those zones. They would basically be the go-to person for the principals of that zone. They would review all the work orders for that zone. They would be able to help out the other team members in their zones when they needed that additional help. They would make the purchases for that zone. So you're having one person to make the purchases for equipment and tools and parts and things of that nature. Again, they'd be the primary contact for Jeff as the supervisor of maintenance. They would be responsible for maintaining the inventory of the facilities for the needs for their zone. And they're also, most importantly, be responsible for ensuring all the preventive maintenance programs are performed and recorded in the required time frame. So right now what we have is we have 4 plumbers. So I'm lacking 1 plumber to be able to get 1 plumber to each zone. I do have 5 electricians, so we do have 1 electrician for every zone. I have 6 HVAC. I need 10 HVAC to be able to have 2 HVAC positions for every zone. HVAC work 95% of the time is a 2-man job. So putting 1 HVAC person per zone, they're either going to steal the plumber or the electrician or the coordinator to help them do their work on a daily basis, which is taken away from them doing their work. So I need those 5 positions for each zone. So Mr. Bradshaw has worked out the APA, he's called an APA 3 level zone maintenance plumber, the 4 HVAC positions, and then the 5 zone coordinator positions.
These zone coordinators are like working supervisors, is that right? That's
Yes, sir.
sort of-
They would
okay.
essentially be reporting to Jeff.
Right.
Jeff would be distributing the work to them, Mr. Meacham, and then they would be managing their zones. They would be responsible for their 500,000 square feet of space, of maintenance space. And it's somewhat divided up into the magisterial districts because that's just the way the schools fall per square footage. So that works out well as well. So that is what we're asking for to get to that zone maintenance. Now, I'm not going to lie. If we can at least get the 5 trade positions, we can begin that zone maintenance with those workers, the plumbers, the electricians, and the HVAC folks. Jeff is already managing all those folks on his own, so it would be fantastic, and it's the goal to get the 5 coordinator positions. But even if I was to get 1 of them and then the 5 trades, Jeff would have help managing those zones. You would have 2 people managing the zones, and then as funding becomes available, we knock out another zone or another zone until we get to the goal of where we want to be, with each zone having a so-called coordinator or manager, and Jeff overseeing the entire operation. So that is the request for those positions. Now, the $123,000. What that does, it allows us to contract out work to vendors, for us to interview HVAC repair companies in the county, electrical companies in the county, plumbing companies in the county, and when we have issues that pop up, we can have someone on contract that we can call, and they have a 2-hour window or a 4-hour window, whatever's established in the contract, and they're going to come to the school and fix the issue for us while our guys are still doing their maintenance work. We can also farm out some of the maintenance work to these companies. That $123,000 allows us anywhere from 15 to 25 hours a week contracted work outside of our department. And what that allows us to do is knock down the 506 work orders that we have right now, with 70% of those work orders being HVAC issues. So we're averaging about 50 work orders a day, sometimes as many as 70, sometimes as little as 35. But that you can see the situation we're in, and we have really, what we're looking at is we have 6, 4, and 5. We have that many electricians, plumbers, and HVAC trying to handle 75% of 500 work orders right now. And so this gets us on that path of getting to be more preventive and allowing us to knock some of these work orders out and become more preventive than reactive. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're asking for.
Yes.
Mr. Lowe, if I could just expand on Mr. Butzer's question about these zone coordinators. I guess I want to make sure, are they going to have the skills, kind of like, I liken it to our mechanics when we have, bus drivers out, they can step up to the plate and drive a bus. Or are these coordinator positions going to have the skills to do the repairs when we need it? I just want to make sure we don't add another middle manager, if that makes sense.
Right, and I think what we're looking for somebody is the right word, a jack of all trades. Someone who has a comprehensive knowledge of those three systems, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Not necessarily that they're licensed in any of the three. It would be great if they could be, but if we have someone with that knowledge that they could be an assistant to, yes, they're running the zone, but they can also help out the leads, the licensed guys that we have on staff, to help them perform their jobs on a daily basis and still do the management portion of it. The purchasing, the managing, so these guys can just do the work. That is the intent for those positions.
And would the maintenance workers in those zones report to the zone coordinator?
Yes, that would be, the work would flow from the supervisor of maintenance to the coordinators to the teams. And of course, it all flows through this new software program that we purchased that we're starting to implement. Well, actually, we have our kickoff meeting Thursday. So that's moving forward.
I've looked at what he's putting together here, and what he's doing is he's doing an industry standard model for the amount of square footage we have. You've got to organize this way to get to where we want to go. There's no doubt in my mind. It's not only ownership. It's what you're doing is assigning a dedicated team to a zone, and the way it works out, there's five of us, and there's going to be 5 zones. So each of the schools in our respective districts will have a dedicated team who are going to be responsible for the maintenance of that facility. Those facilities? What's good about that too is when it comes to, I heard some examples where, we found burned out equipment in some of our buildings. When I'm sorry, I have a blank on his name. You're the guy who reports to you.
Mr. Meacham, Jeff Meacham.
Mr. Meacham. Anyway, and one of the things I asked, so people walked by this burned out equipment all the time. There it is. It's burned out. Oh well, okay. It's not my building, And so there's a lot of finger pointing, and you don't have accountability. But when you have one person or one group to go to, it's theirs. They own it. It's no excuse for walking by something that doesn't work.
You can ask that question, why is this way?
Exactly.
And you expect to get an answer at that time. And also, as over time, the guys working in those zones, those teams, are going to become intimately knowledgeable of the equipment and the assets that we have in that. So they're going to know those air handlers and those VAV boxes. They're going to know them inside and out. And that's what we want. We want them to foresee the issues before they pop up. And when you get settled into an area, and the goal is to keep these guys, and we're doing a really good job for the most part of having some resiliency with the guys staying with us, and we're getting a good crew of people in. Is they become intimate to those areas, and they're going to know when the principal or when a board member wants to know something about an item in that zone, we're going to have somebody on hand to be able to tell you.
If you have an influx, I understand the maintenance part and, being proactive. What if you have an influx of work orders in one area? Do you shift over anybody, or how do you handle that?
Well, I think that's where the coordinators can come in, where they could work together, and maybe there could be some overlap. I mean, we're all a team, even though we only have our own zones. But I would never say not to bring a guy from another zone over to help out with, especially if we have a major issue, or like you just said, an influx of work orders for one trade to help alleviate some of that work. But that's also where that money comes in available, where I can call a vendor or a contractor here in Roanoke County, say, hey, you're on 2-hour notice, we need you here to take care of this list of work orders. And with them on contract, that's something that's very possible and available to us.
Yeah, this is just an organizational structure or model, but if something really catastrophic happens, it's all hands on deck, and it all goes through him. So yeah, you would shift resources.
Yes.
Were the salaries, were they based on market analysis that we've done?
Yes. That's correct.
I defer to Jim.
Yeah, they're going to fall. They would fall in the C41 part of the pay plan. Yes, that's correct.
So that's what the area is paying.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You want me to go ahead and go through the transportations? So, okay, great. I knew Susan was going to stick it to me up here. All right, so we have 2 positions right now in transportation who are doing lead technician work but not being paid for lead technician. So that is those 2 requests right there. The move position from trade to camera technician, that is basically someone who's doing the camera technician work. It's his specialty, but he's being paid lot attendant rate. And then I guess the big one for transportation is the increase the administrative assistant contract to 260 days. Right now, this lady is basically doing 260 days worth of work in 230 days. She's very knowledgeable of the routing system, and she's between her administrative work and then helping out with the routing and things like of that nature. There's a difficulty. They're a person short, basically, is what it's coming down to in transportation. And so what they want to do is make her 260 days, let her deal with the routing, help with the routing, help with the information with the stuff that's going on in the garage, and then hire an administrative assistant to help deal with the phone volume, which is tremendous, that they get in the transportation department. So that is the request for the transportation. And then the facilities and operations utilities, that is basically a 1.5% increase in electrical that we're expecting in the coming year. I think that does me for the whole slide right there.
All right, thank you.
So then this is the last slide of the departmental budget requests. And on here is, was discussed earlier, we do have the 3 elementary life counselors for our Title I schools and the part-time school counselor request at Green Valley. So that's continuing on. We did, as I said, sharpen our pencils and firm up those numbers based on the current pay plan or the implemented pay plan plus 1 step. The behavioral position degree supplements are continued forward, and then there's a need for in CTE to get $13,606 worth of equipment put in there. Something went sideways when we pulled all their equipment out and put it in the grant fund, and we took out too much, and so I'm just asking to put that back. So then the remaining timeline, this is probably your favorite slide of everything I ever present to you, because this means it's pretty much over. I've highlighted the General Assembly crossover does occur this Friday, and then next Thursday is when the General Assembly is planned to adjourn, but they may go into a little longer session. I've heard some rumors about that. And then in March, the veto session will begin on the 17th. So I'm hoping the next budget work session will be on. I'm not hoping that it'll be on March 2nd. It will be on March 2nd. I'm hoping to be able to bring back an updated, at least the crossover, if not the final state calc tool, along with the county revenue, and be able to help you just put it all together and see where we can get everything fit into the pot.
David, did you have something?
Yeah, a quick question. I noticed on Mr. Lowe's list earlier that the Hidden Valley tennis courts had been completed, and I did not see, I know we delayed the tennis courts at Northside for the 23rd consecutive year. And then Glenver and the other tennis courts in the system. I did not see those back on this list. Is that something that
They would not be on this list. This is for new money. The list that they're going to be on is going to be putting, as soon as we adopt this budget, they're in the CMP, and we're just going to swap the money out with the William Byrd High project.
That's in with the turf field. I couldn't resist.
So that's a different process.
Still on this list.
That's on the capital.
they're still on this list?
The tennis court renovations, that's all of them, it's just
Kept me too long.
up there.
Gotcha. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that hadn't been forgotten.
How many years is Northside?
I think 23, I was told.
But who's counting?
Hidden Valley's only been redone 3 times since it was built, but Northside's.
All right.
Obviously, it wasn't done correctly the first time.
50 years ago?
And it has been at least since 84, 85. Since
Well, when
the
you
tennis courts
you're
have
also
been
building in a floodplain too.
Because they
right?
weren't used when I was in high school there.
Okay. Maybe more than 23 years.
Yeah, they were playing at Walden Park back in the 80s.
Just to refresh everybody's memory as to why we took the tennis courts out, it was when we could not give teachers a raise because of COVID. That's what we're in the optics of putting tennis courts in and not raising teachers' salaries didn't look very good. That's why we did what we did. So when we put the teachers' raises back in, which I think we're going to do, we should put those things back in there too. But that's why we did what we did. It wasn't that we didn't want to do them.
There you go.
So, anything else on the agenda? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.